Next up, we're going to continue on the theme of music NFTs. And we're going to feature Renata Lowenbraun, who's going to talk about what's next in the world of music NFTs. So,
my name is Renata Lowenbraun, and I'll give you a little bit of background on sort of my experience and some of the challenges we've been having with a company that I created called Infinity about music NFTs, primarily in the genres where I come from, which is R&B, rap, and pop music. And so I'd like to think I'm a lot of things. I'm an inventor, Bitcoin node operator, NFT collector, but before that, and even now, this is the last thing I tell people because people don't like lawyers, but I was a music lawyer, and I worked with a lot of major label artists, producers, and songwriters. I began as one of a cadre of attorneys with Rodney Jerkins, who was in South Jersey at the time. He went on to become one of the biggest R&B and pop producers. I'm originally from Queens, and so a lot of guys in particular from the Bridge took a liking to me, so I ran a record label on Caroline Distribution at the time, which was the independent arm of EMI, for an artist called Tragedy Gaddafi, who was riding off the success of his production company at that time, with Capone and Noriega, who had gone gold. Nori now is doing very well with his own podcast show, and worked with a lot of folks, and ended up getting into tech as a tech lawyer because a long time ago, some guys out of the music industry dragged me into a startup that at the time, it was early on, called Club Create, gave you as a music fan or me as a film, a fan of anything, the ability to mix music online, or video online, or film online if you did it. And it was a cool little company. We had a lot of applications licensed with a lot of folks, and including some of the major labels, some of other brands like a Microsoft. And it got me started in the tech industry. I started going on and on and on into different Fortune 500 companies, and most recently left a company called Prove, which was running the legal department in digital identity, which is very hot right now in NFT space, in NFTs and all things Web3. And I ended up telling myself I would never forgive myself if I didn't go back to music, particularly with Web3. And so I started a company called Infinity. So that's what you see here. And just very briefly, this is Infinity now, and if anybody's thinking about starting a company, I actually joined the Founder Institute. I got into that program. They're the world's largest pre-seed accelerator, and was really great in actually helping anybody start a company. So if anybody's thinking about it or wants assistance, you already have one, you should do that. So this is sort of how we began sort of talking about ourselves. We originally, with the idea of Web3, again, as a background, I don't know, I'm going to age myself, but I really was part of the major label machine when we still had CDs and when everything went digital and everything about the music business changed, including how you find artists. So the artistry of A&R, from my opinion, went out the window, right? Because now you look at everything on statistics on what everybody's doing. And so for me, what's interesting, even when we were listening to the last panel, the idea that, hey, how are people going to adopt to music? Right? I mean, to NFTs now, right? One of the hard things and one of the big focuses for the future is community engagement for any company, right? Well, again, for me, hey, as a consumer, I remember not really wanting to work with MP3 downloads because it was very hard. And eventually you end up adopting to it. And so if you're in this space, one of the things when you talk about the future, what's next is this really is going to happen. Right? Things are going to change, so consumers are going to be buying NFTs. And you need to stick with it if you're involved in it, if you're an artist trying to do it, if you're a company trying to do it. It will transform the same way everything changed from CDs to MP3s. And before that, when cassette tapes went out the window and we used CDs. And prior to that, when we were all about vinyl, and then we went to cassette tapes. So stick with it. But I wanted to talk very briefly about really some areas, really for everybody, just some food for thought to think about really the future and what's next. One is those companies that really are engaging and doing community engagement very well, where you brand yourselves because you have such a big community that you have the opportunity to partner with brands that are looking for your community, whether it happens to be selling NFTs or anything else, right? And just from a big scale, just think, you know what? Pepsi's probably interested in young folks who are in Web3 buying NFTs. So that's one thing. And the challenge in finding community engagement or enhancing it, well, right, there's a lot to do, but the best thing, and they did talk about it on one of these panels, was really looking to partner with other brands that are doing what you're doing, whether they're your competition or not, because the more of us doing it together, you can grow quicker. So think about that. The other area that's very big is digital identity, which is Web3 in general, but for NFTs, right? So as everybody's moved to their cell phones to be able to access things, and again, this is the space I come from the last company I was in, you know, even wallets now, if you think about it, if you're buying, right, NFTs with your wallets, it's wonky. Why do I have to sit there and enter information to my wallet all the time? Can't there be something to be able to identify who I am just because of, right, my habits already and what I'm doing? So that's what digital identity is. The idea that you, right, you don't have to use passwords, you don't have to do things very much, right? Somebody or something should be recognizing me, so I don't have to sit there and waste my time entering all of this information. And in Web3 and for wallets and all of those things, that's one of the areas in the future, even for music NFTs. I'm talking very generally now, but again, if you're thinking about some sort of inventive area to go to, do that. I have 2 minutes left. And again, also if you're in Web3, you're doing NFTs, right? IP is very important. There are so many new inventions happening day by day because it's such a new space. So think about cool things, talk with patent attorneys, or do some reading, because you can file some short form patent applications, which are called provisional applications in the US, a 1 year only, until you get the real lawyer coming in to do the real patent application, which is called a non-provisional. So be inventive, think, whether you've implemented it or not, and whether you're actively doing about it, just some things you can think about so you can be ahead of the curve and own that space from an invention point of view. There's two other areas that I wanted to speak about. One is streaming, right? There's a lot of companies out there with music NFTs saying, right, let's kill Spotify because it's so unfair, it's so crazy. Let's get rid of Apple Music. We're gonna do that with NFTs, right? And there's some companies doing it in some very creative ways, trying to do sort of pay to earn to incentivize, right, fans, music fans, part of the community, to wanna play music and get rewards for exchange to be able to build a whole base. But this idea of thinking about the future of music NFTs, again, what can I do as a company? What can I think of? All right, as a fan trying to get in it, and as an artist getting in it, what can I do to really get artists away from thinking about streaming, because you can barely make any money no matter how much you try to do, and to think about building a community, streaming, whatever you want to think about, so you don't have to focus on that. And at Infinity, actually, we've been thinking about that quite a bit, and please don't be afraid to iterate. This is the wrong, what's the rest of my thing? I can't find it. Well, there's only one page. All right, there's only one page. For the there's other two areas too. Think about IP on copyrights and trademarks. There's so much areas where you can think about too, to be more of the infrastructure, to say, listen, I can offer certain types of licenses. So, right, if I'm selling NFTs, I don't have to think about what I'm gonna offer, right, my community. So there's a lot of sort of innovative space there, and I've got all of 4 seconds left. The other big chunk that I wanted to think about, was community, streaming, and sort of IP. Again, really on the copyrights and trademarks component of it. And as one example, they were talking about it also on another panel, when you use existing music, not new music, because that's easier unless you're using a sample, and then it's not so easy. There's a lot of rights attached to that, right? There's rights for synchronization rights, there's rights for mechanical licensing, and in the copyright law in particular in the US, mechanicals, you don't have to go back to the original owner to get permission, because there's something called a compulsory use, where all you have to do is pay according to really what's been established. But if it's really a sync use, which is traditionally film and television, a moving picture where you want to attach music to it, if you're using pre-existing music that you didn't create, there's a synchronization right that's attached to, and you've got to go back to the original owners or the companies doing that on their behalf, licensing, to get permission to add that to an NFT. So as you can see, there's a lot of room here for this IP space to think about that, to offer things for consumers, maybe to do it on their behalf for them, to be able to give these form licenses for people to do. But we should all be thinking about these cool ways. I think the future is unlimited, the same way it's been in the music industry, everything else, right? We've changed, I think, with technology quicker than anybody else for anything. And if you're in it, stay in it. If you're thinking about being in it, be in it. And collaborate with everyone as much as you can. And I tell everyone as well that collaboration is sort of this great little Web3 word, but the reality is the music industry and musicians and producers and artists and engineers, we've always been about collaboration. So it's funny to me that, it's a term now about other things when in fact we've been about it longer than other areas in the arts. So that's all I have to say. I can be reached on LinkedIn at Renata Lowenbraun. You can go to infinity.xyz if you want to and reach me there or reach one of our team. Jen Cadiz is here too. She's head of marketing, actually watching me. And hope everybody's really looking forward to continuing and doing everything they can. And that's it. Thanks so much.